All right, so I just want to relocate everyone. We are speaking about the lower Wildcat Creek. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Wildcat Creek, starting at the hills, at the Berkeley Hills, flowing north, and then having this elbow and flowing into the bay in Richmond, San Pablo, Richmond, and North Richmond. And so this is the area that we will be working on. We'll be focusing on three specific projects. The first one is the fish passage, working to restore the older fish passage and the sediment basin, and Ari will be speaking about that. The second one is the project that John Steer mentioned, which is the watershed connections, working to introduce urban greening to this neighborhood of North Richmond. And the third one is the shoreline adaptation, working to increase the resilience of the North Richmond shoreline to sea level rise. And what we want to do in this project, so in this presentation, although these projects seem to be kind of disconnected, we are trying to create a vision that really connects all of them into one global program or project or whatever, but really trying to tie all of them together into a larger vision for the lower Wildcat Creek. And so first and foremost, of course, there's a connection, because a geographical connection, right? Because they're all located in the lower Wildcat Creek. But to us, there's also a strong connection because all of these projects came out of a water needs assessment that the watershed did a few years ago. And these three projects came out as being important to the community. And because of that, what we're doing is we're really focusing on the community engagement for this process. And we're working on a participatory design framework, and we'll talk about that more. But in each of these projects, what we're trying to do, another buzzword is multi benefit project. So we're not only working to restore or increase the resilience of the ecosystem, but we're also looking to connect community members and all of this together and create opportunities for enhanced connections and trail amenities and other parks and amenities. What the watershed project does is we kind of tie all of these together, and we connect different organizations and components that are required to work together in order to develop these large-scale projects. So we work with community members, and of course we work with agencies. Agencies are one of our most important partners. Of course, they lead these projects in most of the time, and I want to acknowledge many of them on this call that are crucial to all these projects, John Steer and Michelle Manusco and Paul and Gus, of course, and RCP and Chris, and a lot of other partners that have mentioned our name here, and we work with on other projects that we won't talk about today, the RDC, American Rivers, SFPI, of course, Urban Tilt, we work with a lot. And so thank you all for working on this together with us. All right, we'll start with the fish passage. And as I said, the fish passage or the fish works on two. Originally, the goal was to work on the fish ladder retrofit and reconstruction, the sediment basin, but also it has a strong community component, and we'll talk about that after Ari. So Ari, please go ahead.
Thanks, Naama. Yeah, I'm gonna go to this slide to orient you to the site and what I'm going to be talking about. For the fish passage retrofit and the sediment basin improvements. Here we are just east of Verde Elementary, and the two main components are the existing sediment basin that was built in the late 80s and early 90s to reduce the amount of sediment going down to the marsh that was causing problems for the marsh downstream, and the fish passage structure that was built to improve fish passage upstream past the Union Pacific Railroad and bridge right here. And the issue that this project is addressing is that this fish passage structure built by the Corps in the late 80s and early 90s is non-functioning. That I think the sediment buildup and urban debris, as well as the sizing of it, make it impassable by coastal steelhead trout at many times throughout the year. Go to the next slide, Mama. So the goals of this project are to improve habitat connectivity for Central California coast steelhead trout in Wildcat Creek and improve flooding in Wildcat Creek. So the elements of this project are to redesign and retrofit the existing fish ladder and the downstream sediment basin, to update an existing 65% design that was developed about a decade ago, to incorporate some more environmental benefits, and to model the alternatives and ensure that they meet fish passage criteria. And after we've done those tasks, we'll complete planning and design to create a shovel-ready project at the site. So to orient you to the existing fish passage structure, it's important to note that there's this downstream section that you can see that's kind of got these look like C's right there that is a Damerel fish ladder, and that has a 20% slope, and it clogs with debris. And then the upstream portion that are Washington baffles, and their slope is a very flat slope and also clogs with debris. So Naama, you can go to the next slides and just show. Yeah, so there's the Damerel part, and then you can go to the next slide. And the Washington baffles, you can see tires and mattresses get caught in this section. Go to the next slide. And so this is what it's supposed to look like when clear of debris. Go to the next slide. And this is what it looks currently like, full of sediment and debris. And here is some pictures of groups cleaning out the fish passage structure. Takes a lot of people working on this in its current state. What are we going to do about it? There are some pictures of the community engagement day that, or the creek cleanup day that we had out there. And shout out to the Watershed Project and the district for having a lot of great events engaging the community. So go to the next slide. So the proposal is to remove that existing, remove the whole middle bore, demolish it, and widen it through this central portion of the fish passage structure. And one thing, I don't have an image showing this, but essentially there's these three sections of this flood control structure, and so the center one is where we're focusing our efforts to improve fish passage. And it's hard to kind of see this, but essentially we're going from the existing fish passage structure goes from a very flat slope in the first part and then a very steep slope. And so this proposed design replaces those pieces with a roughened ramp with emergent boulders that has about a 1% slope, and also some step pools that have a 4.5% slope. And this will help pass sediment through the fish passage structure. We won't have as much getting clogged and stopped up through here, and also has a more natural design than the current design. So we can go through these quickly, but yeah, demolish the existing fish ladder. Go to the next slide. Replace the Damerel fish ladder and downstream portion of the baffles with step pools. Next slide, and then replace the upstream baffles with a rough and ramp and boulder buttresses. And so Flow West has stepped in to complete modeling and ensure that not only does the fish passage structure meet fish passage criteria and flood criteria, but we're also looking to incorporate things like added channel complexity, incorporating large boulders that would create resting places for fish as they're moving up through the channel. And so that's what we've been tasked with DWR to investigate. Go to the next slide, and have developed these great 2D HEC-RAS models that show depth and velocity. And you can see here that at 168 cubic feet per second, that through that middle bore, it's staying mainly in the blue and the green, which is what we want for fish to be able to pass through this section. The sediment basin is the other part of the project I'm going to be speaking to, and I mainly just want to show some photos of just how dynamic this system is out here. It's been interesting. I've worked on this project over the course of this year, where we're coming off of another historic drought, and then are entered one of the rainiest periods in California history. And so you can see this is a view of the basin back in September, and then you go to the next slide, and similar view. These are pictures from that Naama took of a very different looking area and through the sediment basin. And this is a view from the corporation yard, and that is just north that the district maintains. And you go to the next slide. And this is from February, so after the storms, and you can see that there is a defined channel through the sediment basin, which is great, but part of what we're looking to address here, often during different flows, in the sediment basin, the channel spreads out and is too shallow for fish to move through and get through the basin. And so we're looking to improve the sediment basin, to improve fish passage through the basin, to also improve I don't want to say the operation of the sediment basin, to minimize the environmental impacts of needing to remove the sediment from this basin. And we're also looking to design the sediment basin such that the fish can move through it both at when it's at capacity and when it's been cleared of sediment. Again, this is we're still working on the design, but this is kind of a preliminary look at how that would work, of incorporating some ecologically beneficial training berms and access that will train the creek to have a more defined channel through the sediment basin. So the next steps are to settle on a preferred alternative with the funder, Department of Water Resources, and then finalize the 70% design, working with other stakeholders to do that. We'll circulate and certify CEQA after we've got a defined 70% design, obtain permits, and finalize the project through 100% design. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ari. And I'm sure there'll be questions. I think that it would be best to take questions at the end, and I think we'll have enough time. One important thing to note, this project is at the design phase. I think you all understand that, but far ahead from us is the funding and implementation. But that's really good that we are stepping in to work with community members at this early phase. And we, the Watershed Project, together with Methuen and Flow West, have been having multiple conversations with community members. And I want to show these photos that kind of show some of the problems that community members have raised. So first and foremost, I think that's an undeveloped trail, and we keep coming back to increasing the access of community members to these amazing natural resources. And I'm sure you all know what I'm assuming you all know what the Wildcat Creek Trail looks like up until then, and then near Alvarado Park, and then in San Pablo. But in this lower part of the creek, the trail is very old, it's unmaintained. And so people really don't want to come over here. There's overgrown trees in the creek, which impacts, of course, the flow, and also causes for more trash accumulation than there already is. There's these gravel pines, and actually, I want to go back for a second because there was even a better photo that Ari showed. These are these gravel piles, and that's just banking gravels here, and some of them are very close to the trail. So again, it kind of creates an issue. There's no community amenities whatsoever. Currently, no street lights, no lights, no benches, there's nowhere to go really. And community members, when we talk with them, a lot of them speak about safety issues, both within the overgrown vegetation and around the gravel piles. And when we bring community members to this area, they said that even their community members that have been living around here for decades, they haven't took that 5-minute walk to see this area. And so what the Watershed Project does, as I said, is we're initiating discussion with the county and with other organizations such as SOS and CORE and the Sheriff Office to start to speak about solutions for these issues. We also do a lot of other kind of advocacy and community outreach activities with other media. We're developing a children's book that we will give to the children at Verde School, kind of providing an opportunity for a more engaged learning of the fish and the importance and the tribal connections to this part of the land. And we have conducted, as Juliana said, interviews with our tribal consultants from the Confederate villages of Lishan, and we're editing these videos. Actually, our intern, Ellie, that is going to edit them, is on this call, and that will be then published on the website for this project. But one of the most important things we do is we go out to community members, we bring them to this location as much as we can, and we ask them to fill this very short survey to let us know what would be their preferences for the different amenities and the trail components. And we take this information and we deliver that to the architectural designers we work with, which is Mithun, and I'll pass it to Tim to speak about that a bit more.
Sure, yeah, happy to. Thanks, Naama. So just to walk through a bit of the development so far on this, the design elements that have emerged from the community process that Naama just talked about. So what you're seeing here is a illustrative plan view of the area. So Verde School is just to the left. You can see the creek basin that Ari was touching on, sort of in the middle of the image. And there's sort of 3 parts of potential upgrades for community amenities that are starting to emerge. The one to the far right of the image related to the fish ladder location, which is focused on having interpretive opportunities related to the fish ladder and the creek ecology. There's then upgrades to the paving and lighting along the trail. And then as you move closer to Verde School on the left of the image, we've in those conversations with parents and educators from the school started to identify some of their aspirations for program and space that could help activate this part of the creek and really sort of serve as being a sort of part of their sort of daily life way as they come and go from school a couple times a day. And so if we move through the next couple slides, we can look at each of those areas in a little more focus. So this is a kind of bird's eye view over by the fish ladder, where we're suggesting a series of terraces for seating that could be used for outdoor education, that could support community gatherings, and an opportunity maybe to get up just a little bit higher on a sort of overlook situation that really does give an opportunity to look up and down the watershed and sort of understand all those connections a little more clearly. There's also a small play area here. Maybe we can move to the next slide from here. This is then moving over closer to Verde School. So Verde is sort of in the left-hand side of this image. And a lot of what we heard from our conversations with parents was the need for some program and opportunity for play and gathering that would work for parents with with children who are not yet, school age. And so there's a focus here on play, on shade trees, and on some gathering space where we were hearing things about the PTA group wanting to have their meetings outside, during COVID and other situations, having an opportunity to have outdoor gathering space that's shaded but near the Verde campus became a priority that we heard a lot about. And so this part of the plan is looking to implement those things. And then the next image just gives a sense of walking along an upgraded trail with sort of Verde is behind us in this view, and we're looking into that amenity space. And so lots left to talk about with all the stakeholders around the issues Naama mentioned, around maintenance, around operations, around ensuring safety. But this is the beginning of the coalescing of the community aspirations for the site.
Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, moving downstream, not far from there, the North Richmond Watershed Connection project. This project is funded by the Coastal Conservancy Urban Greening program. And there's 3 partners working on this project, which are on this call. One of them, the Contra Costa Public Works, Transportation Engineering and Watershed Program. And they worked, one of the component of this project was the Fred Jackson Way, first mile, last mile. And what they did is they already did that, and it looks wonderful. They widened the sidewalks, removed barriers for pedestrian to walk. They created buffers for bike lanes, and they planted 38 street trees. And Urban Stealth is the second one on Fred Jackson, northern to there, closer to the farm. They initiated rain gardens and bioretention basins, and I'm thrilled to hear that you're going to have a celebration of that. I'll definitely be there. Thank you, Paola. And the watershed project, our component was in the urban greening is to work more inside the neighborhood. And we have 3 main components for this project: an adopted tree. Maybe I'll pass one and you'll see it. There's 3 main components. So one of them is adopted tree, which Jeanine will talk about shortly. But the goal was to improve the tree equity and expand the urban forest. The second one is to create bicycle wayfinding and to show links for riders, and improves the safety and support active transportation. And the third walk is an urban nature walk. And what you see here in this map, so the yellow lines are the mark the bicycle pathways and where the wayfinding will be, and the blue line marks the that urban nature loop starting from the Verde School, extending also to the right east toward the Fish Passage, but basically going along Fred Jackson toward Shields Reed Park and then back in to Garamita. There's another component of this urban loop, which I'll talk a bit, which is the safe route to school. So kids from the Verde School walk every day to their after-school program in the Shields Reed Park, and we're working to improve that component for them as well. So I'm sorry. So what we're doing is we're creating this loop with points of interest about nature, points that are related to nature in the urban setting, and about the heritage and the history of the neighborhood. And we're speaking with community members and our travel consultants to identify those points and bring some more context and content, including videos and photos. And at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a self-guided walk. So people can literally simply walk along the route, but there'll also be a self-guided walking tour on an app, so people can have access to all the additional information that we'll upload. And in the future, we also want community members or other volunteers to lead guided tours. So on the ground, it will look like this. We'll have some wayfinding elements. We'll have either these stickers on the ground to denote that this is a point of interest, with a QR code to link to the app, or we'll have these medallions, more medallions type of wayfinding elements in the sidewalk itself. And then the last component that I briefly mentioned is that safe route to school, this route that the children walk. Last spring, we initiated the first component of that activity, and we created this bubble stencils on the sidewalk all along the way that the children's walk. And this year we'll add these stickers of we're doing some research with our interns and with UC Berkeley students to identify which, and with the children. It started with an audit with the children to understand what types of animals and birds they were most interested about, and we'll put them between those stencils. And now I want to introduce, I want to pass it to Jeanine.
Hi there, my name is Jeanine Strickland, and I'll be presenting of the watershed-based tree equity component. In this presentation, we're going to talk about several important questions. What is the urban forest? What benefits do trees provide? What do we have now? What do we want? And how do we get what we want? So first, the urban forest is simply all of the trees that grow in an urban area, from an individual tree in a resident's yard to the street trees in the public right-of-way, to the trees in parks and along the creek corridors. A large body of research supports the social, environmental, and economic benefits of a healthy urban forest. Investing in natural infrastructure by planting trees with residents is the easiest and most cost-effective step towards greater climate equity. Trees shade and cool neighborhoods, clean the air, support biodiversity, increase property values, and strengthen social ties. Trees improve residents' physical and mental health, and they create employment opportunities. Cities all over the world are facing a challenge. By 2030, 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. Urban forests and natural habitats are dwindling due to urbanization, sprawl, and densification, causing a loss of essential ecosystem services. Since the urban forest is not distributed evenly, neither are those benefits. Neighborhoods with poor tree equity are suffering from disproportionate impacts of climate change. American Forest studied land cover in the Bay Area and assigned tree equity scores by census blocks to understand tree equity at the neighborhood level. With 3 to 8% land cover, North Richmond received the low score of 38 out of 100. There are a range of underlying causes of poor tree equity in this area, but residents envision a more resilient future. How can we leverage the tremendous momentum for collective action already underway and funding available to build climate resilience in vulnerable communities? Well, let's zoom into North Richmond and examine the urban forest. A decade ago, Richmond received a planning grant to develop a citywide urban greening master plan to guide and coordinate future greening projects. In 2012, the City of Richmond updated the Richmond Tree Ordinance and completed an inventory of city-owned trees, including street trees, park trees, and trees on city-owned property. The inventory mapped over 22,000 city-maintained trees and over 13,000 planting areas available for new tree planting. Community-based groups are engaged in tree planting and stewardship in the zones shown here. But the North Richmond Urban Greening Plan does not include North Richmond, so this is a gap. The Watershed Project is currently conducting field-based tree survey in the project area to quantify the existing urban forest. We drafted a tree equity plan as a framework for the Adopt a Tree program area for the North Richmond Watershed Connections Project. That's the area in green there. Due to poor tree canopy cover, minimal benefits are provided today. We found that by planting 400 new trees, they would provide over $200,000 in combined environmental cost benefits annually, in addition to human health benefits. Where can we plant trees to improve the current tree canopy cover from the to 30% canopy cover recommended by American Forests. The Watershed Project is conducting the tree survey to discover tree planting opportunities. However, the Adopt a Tree program is limited to planting on occupied lots, shown in blue, and the majority of the existing mature trees that benefit the neighborhood are on unoccupied lots. We are looking at typical site conditions, utilities, parking, sidewalk conditions, front yards, to count existing trees and assess opportunities for planting trees with the residents. The urban tree canopy is shrinking despite tree planting so far, and proactive, adaptive management of the urban forest is essential to reverse this trend. Like other unincorporated county neighborhoods, North Richmond also has area-specific challenges, so neighborhood-level collaboration and partnership is key. An urban greening action plan is needed to help address these challenges. So our key recommendations are as follows. We want to procure the area-wide tree inventory and benchmark the existing conditions and current benefits provided by the urban forest to maximize the social, environmental, and economic benefits of trees. To expand the tree canopy with the goal of 30% by 2030 by planting trees and protecting existing trees. Create a sustained funding stream for tree care and maintenance. Create local jobs and invest in watershed-based green infrastructure. Manage urban trees throughout their life cycle. And finally, to integrate urban greening into climate action planning to support neighborhood-level action plans. So our strategies and actions were developed to reach these 5 goals: to engage, expand, invest, protect, and manage. We're piloting a replicable Adopt a Tree implementation process and documenting it. And in order to establish a healthy urban forest, we strive to plant the right trees in the right places, select species suited to site-specific wind, shade, and soil conditions, and choose trees that are low maintenance and drought tolerant. This means taller trees will be planted away from overhead utility lines to avoid future conflicts and minimize pruning and large tree maintenance. We're working with the county to develop an approved street tree list that is suited to North Richmond. The short list is based on research and interviews with local tree planting organizations and professional arborists. Next steps, develop a tree ordinance that can regulate the preservation, protection, and planting of trees. Trees are essential infrastructure. It's up to us to keep the urban forest healthy so that residents reap the benefits. We need to develop an urban greening program to support and coordinate best practices in tree management, urban greening, and green stormwater infrastructure in unincorporated Contra Costa County neighborhoods. And of course, we want to continue to work collaboratively for improved tree equity, human health, and climate resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeanine. Jeanine and the Watershed Project has been working with the county on this tree equity project for a long time. And I just want to add that this is a pilot project for the county, and we look this as a model. And once we have this moving forward, hopefully we can adopt that for the whole county. All right, so I want to introduce the third and last project. So we're nearly there. This is the North Richmond Shoreline Adaptation Project. This is another project that came up out of a community. This was a community-driven design effort. It started with Resilience by Design, and currently we're at the end phase of a project that has been funded by the SF Bay Restoration Authority. The lead applicant of this project is the West County Wastewater. And the goal of the project is to increase the resilience of the North Richmond shoreline to sea level rise. As you can see in this map, this is the area that will be flooded by the end of the century during high tides and storm surge. So it's covering the West County Wastewater Facility and the Richmond Parkway. and some of the eastern houses of the neighborhood, as well as, of course, inundating the rich natural habitat and the wetland. The reason this area is so sensitive to sea level rise is because in the past it was a mudflat or a bayland, and that's where three creeks ended: the Wildcat Creek, the San Pablo Creek, as well as the Ream Channel or creek, or whatever we call it. So the project itself, the current project design, has two components. The first part is creating a concept design or a 30% level design for the whole stretch between the Dotson Family Marsh in the north and the Chevron Refinery, and hugging the Republic landfill. The second component is a pilot area, or if you probably have heard of this term, the living levee or the horizontal levee, and that is specifically to protect the West County wastewater facility, who already have started to experience issues with their service capacities during these larger events. So this is another project that is in the planning phase, and so it also provides us a great opportunity to work with community members and bring their priorities and needs to this design. So how do we do it? How do we do it in that way? Well, first of all, there's a few guiding principles that we're following for this project. The first one is that it's a multi-benefit approach. So we'll work to protect the human assets, the nature assets, and to bring more community amenities to the disadvantaged and unincorporated neighborhood of North Richmond, and to increase the access of the community members to these assets. The second one is a wide stakeholder engagement, with the understanding that if all of these landowners work together, then the solution we can create for sea level rise will be more effective and more efficient. But that's also one of our challenges, working with all these different landowners, and this is still in the works. And the third guiding principle is the solution is a nature-based solution, utilizing the natural ecosystem and its capacity to cope with changing water levels to deal with rising waters. And Tim will speak about that a bit more. What I want to focus very briefly is on the community outreach that we did for this project, which was very unique. I think that this is, and my partners will probably agree that it was one of the projects that was very unique in its approach in bringing community in. So originally what we're supposed to do is do community outreach and engagement. So just telling people about this project, educating them about sea level rise, and then gathering their community voices. But what we really wanted to do is have a participatory design approach to this project. So instead of community engagement, we brought community members to the decision-making table. Instead of outreach, what we did is through those webinars, we did outreach. We created these webinars, and we went to many community organizations and meetings and told them about the risks and about this project. But the goal of those outreach events was to recruit community members to work with us. And we were able to recruit 20 leaders from the community to work with us. Some of them are on this call. And then instead of educating, we worked with them. We divided them in 3 work groups, and we worked with them for a period of over half a year. And then instead of just gathering community voices, we led a community co-research and design, and community members together with us designed a survey. They selected their sample, who to interview and meet with in their community, and they co-led with us the data collection, focus group discussion, and analyzed the data. And as we did on all of the other projects, we took that data, brought it back to the designers and engineers, and that information led the design itself. So these are just a few photos. We had 20 community members working with us. This was a paid opportunity. We started with the Learning Academy to bring community members up to speed and be able to sit in the decision table with all of the partners. We had field trips to get to know the area better, and then we started to work. The image on the bottom is a Zoom meeting with Tim and Graham and others in Mithun. They led the Envisioning Design Approaches team. And then there was another team led by Juliana that worked on sustainability and growth, thinking of how to connect this project to housing, to job opportunities, to education. And then the third work group met with me, and we designed that community survey together. And I want to pass it back to Tim.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Naama. So as Naama was mentioning, there's this is the scope area for the current concept design study, and so what we're bringing forward in the report deliverable is the vision for the community advocated for multi-benefits related to nature-based sea level rise adaptation, and also as part of the report out, we'll be explaining what data gaps or other kind of process gaps might be missing to move all of this towards in the ground implementation. One of those gaps is around governance. You saw Naama's map of the stakeholders and the collage of property control out there. So, a governance model, which Juliana will touch on later, is one of the important pieces. And another that we're identifying is related to what some folks earlier in the meeting were touching on, which is groundwater, rising groundwater, increasing salinity of groundwater. And so we're identifying all the current best available data related to that, but then identifying where those gaps need to be filled in as we move forward towards any kind of future implementation. So maybe next slide. Always looking to history for clues, right? This is that same sort of outline in the dashed red line of the study area, and you can see how it was sort of one great contiguous marsh pre-development, pre-fill. And then working with the community and identifying priorities for access. There's a couple of spots along the Bay Trail that are difficult to get to from the North Richmond community, and identifying where those potential breaks are that could be addressed. Next slide. And then how those overlay with the sea level rise vulnerability. And what we began to see was, we can see with the three large blue arrows, that the pathway for coastal flooding from sea level rise overlays with where those breaks in access are as well. And so it's an opportunity to bring all of those concerns together in kind of multi-benefit approach to solving for the problem. Let me hit the next slide. And so what we're beginning to suggest is that there's a sort of band of adaptation moving up and down the shoreline, focused on living levee as the base model for how to deal with that, so that we're allowed for the migration of all the existing important marsh habitats to migrate upslope as waters rise, and then in combination with that, atop the levee and on the landward side of the levee, being able to provide other kinds of community identified and advocated for program. Increased trails, gathering space, stormwater treatment, those kinds of opportunities. We've got a great sort of like inventory of amenities that came from all of our conversations with the community. And we're then taking those and working through potential locations for them as it relates to the marsh edge. And we're sort of finding those best opportunities related to topography, bathymetry, property control, those kinds of issues, sort of driving where those best opportunities are for amenities and links. And then I'll just kind of quickly move through these last few slides, which are beginning to visualize how all of that could come together in two areas that we refer to in red here as collaboration clusters, and then the area in yellow, which is adjacent to the West County Wastewater Treatment Facility, which is one of those other blue arrow vulnerable low points. So first looking, we're in a drone here, sort of hovering above the flea market for folks who know the North Richmond area, looking north towards Point Pinole. And next slide. Beginning to unpack sectionally what the topography and grading might look like for protecting to about 3.5 feet of sea level rise and a foot of freeboard and a 100-year coastal flood. You can keep moving quick. Yeah, that's cool. I know we're running behind. Yeah, and then visualizing how all the community amenity benefits can begin to lay into those scenarios. We can move quickly here. This is that area north of the treatment facility, the collaboration cluster. You can just see in this map the dizzying array of different stakeholders that need to come together to pull something like this off. Next slide. Beginning to think about how an ecotone slope levee with trail access could really fill in an important gap in the Bay Trail here. Next slide. And then this is another drone sort of visualizing that. And one thing you can see sort of in the middle of the slide, we're suggesting a reconnection of San Pablo Creek to the Wildcat Creek Marsh, which existed in that previous historic map we were seeing, but currently is cut off. And so creating a habitat corridor there, in addition to all of the yellow lines you see as trail upgrades on top of a sea level rise protection levee slope. And then a similar scenario in the south here, looking at the area around the flea market. You hit the next slide. Again, lots of stakeholders to be engaged and come to the table. Next slide. And then what those outcomes might be when we start to layer it all together. One important note here, you can see where the Richmond Parkway is labeled, the suggestion of a pedestrian overpass at the Parkway. Currently, Wildcat Creek Trail comes down from the fish ladder that we talked about earlier and stops the Parkway. It's impassable to the bay edge from there. And so that's a really important missing link that is identified in a lot of plans and hopefully starts to get traction. And just another version looking at how those various amenities from the community conversation could overlay.
Anything else, Tim? Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, you kept me moving. Thank you. That's great. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you. Juliana, can I pass it to you?
Yeah. So yeah, as you can see, like the level of complexity of this project is enormous, especially like this shoreline adaptation project is going to take a lot of people working together. And not only we have to have a common vision, but how to share the responsibilities. So currently we have a stakeholders working group that was conformed to start like envisioning how they could work together. A lot of the parcel owners, as Tim was showing you, are public agencies. We have flood control, the city of Richmond, and our treatment plant, and Republic Services are some of the bigger agencies. We also have Chevron. So what we're looking for is
Juliana, I just want to let you know that you're
kind of creating a model for multiple stakeholders and kind of think like
Juliana, can you hear me?
bad moment.
Let me know if you can
for
hear
my
me.
audio. Yeah, my internet.
I think that's better. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So like the idea is that we are creating a new model. This hasn't been done around the San Francisco Bay. So there is a couple of examples from the South Bay, but we are looking at creating a new model. And so some of the ideas that we are starting to explore are the idea of maybe having a land trust that can help with some of the land management, also creating like agreements between different agencies. So as we start to roll out the project, then we can have kind of pieces of collaboration in these clusters that Tim was showing. And that will allow like the project to move forward, starting with the pilot project in front of the wastewater treatment facility, and then hopefully eventually connecting it to the Wildcat Creek Trail project. So that's how the vision will come together for the region. But most importantly, we need to think about the maintenance and operations for these things. So in the next slide, you will see, yeah, we can move to the next one. You can see that there is a possibility of creating a green benefit district. And also like now the California has one new model. So what is a green benefit district? It's similar to a community benefit or business improvement district, but has a focus on maintaining and enhancing the public spaces and the green infrastructure. And in some cases that we have seen around California and in San Francisco, there is one, allows residents to invest directly in their neighborhood, but they have to self-tax. So that's a model that may work in some communities, but for a disadvantaged community, we're hoping to have a slightly different model. So if you go to the next slide, this is the new SB 852 Climate Resilience District. And these ones allow for different types of funding. And so what we're trying to look for is models in which there could be a shared governance for the maintenance and operations of green infrastructure, in which you are looking for funding, not only from the stakeholders, but from the state and others to help fund the maintenance and operations long term. So what will allow, it will allow just for the capital improvement projects if we wanted. So the Green Benefit District and the Resilience District could allow for that, the operations, and also could do the fiscal accounting and the hiring of contractors. And more importantly, we can create a local workforce development program. So these are some examples of what they could do. And then another very important element is that this could be a local platform for advocacy. People from the community could be in the governance of this type of districts, and it could help him like really improve the public space and the level of investment in these communities. So that's the last slide I have. I just want to thank everyone for like the great presentations today, for like the entire team of the Watershed Project, and also like Flow West, and it has been probably 7 years we have been working on this project. So we are like kind of at this point where we feel that a lot of the ideas have been like planned, and we're like kind of at the end of the design phase, and some of these projects are kind of moving into implementation phase. So we're happy to start starting to see kind of what that next phase could look like, even if it's just in smaller bits. So thank you, everyone.
Wow, thank you all so much for your presentation and for your work. I'm impressed with the holistic nature of this planning effort. It seems like you guys have thought about everything: safety and access for people and wildlife, tribal interests, interpretive elements, transportation, GI, aesthetics, longevity, it's everything. And one of the things that I think is most impressive is how the various groups involved are working together. And I think this serves as a really excellent model for doing this type of work. So thank you for sharing the work with the forum. I really hope that you'll keep us posted on your progress, and maybe we'll even be able to work together to like have a field trip to one or more of the projects as part of our symposium field day on October 27th. As you intimated in your presentation, it's essential to bring people to the site, for people to have a connection and to, want to steward the land. They can't care about it if they've never been there, they don't know about it. So yes, thank you again. And before I open it up to questions for our presenters, I want to let everybody know that the next forum planning committee meeting, which is open to anyone who's interested in helping us come up with ideas for this forum meeting, for presenters, etc. That meeting will take place on Zoom on March 28th from noon to 1. And if you'd like to participate and don't already receive the planning committee meeting notifications, please let me know. And my email address is in the chat if you don't already have it. And then the next full forum meeting will take place on Zoom on May 10th from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. So thank you so much for your attention on that. And yeah, just thank you again, all the presenters. I'd love to open it to questions now. I think there were a couple of questions in the chat, but maybe I think they've all been answered. Anyone have any questions for our presenters? I can get us started. Oh, okay, great. We've got a couple of participants with raised hands. Okay, Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Naama, and the rest of the presenters for pulling this together in a way that was really accessible and just incredibly impressive, this work. I had a question. The slides in the last part went by really fast, but I'm looking at Chevron as a stakeholder because they have so much shoreline property. I mean, they own 13% of the land in Richmond, and a lot of shoreline property, and a lot that is, of course, heavily polluted. And it's crazy that they're not involved. I mean, I saw in those slides that there were like asterisks after their name, and it was not explained, but I understand that they kind of backed out from their involvement. And how are we going to bring them in?
So
that is my...
Yeah, thank you for the question, Janet. And it's a difficult question. And maybe I'll just say a sentence, and Tim, happy if you add on that. As you mentioned, Chevron is an important component, one of the most dangerous important, because we know, we can only assume what will happen when their land is going to be flooded and what impact will that have on our water. But they joined the meetings before we got the grant. Once we got the grant to start working, their lawyers suggested to them to pull out. We are having discussions about this with the county, and hopefully there'll be some shifts. The problem is that currently it's a voluntary project, right? They don't have, and this is similar to all pollution along the coast. It's voluntary. So until that changes, I think that will be an issue. Tim, do you want to add anything?
I would just add, I second all that. That's good. A good summary, Naama. It's super complicated. I will say where I think we're headed in our final concept design report is to explain that we are trying to provide a vision for a level of flooding protection that, as if Chevron is not participating, but we're going to illuminate in our report the risks involved if they don't become participatory at some point, and how much better the options could be for a holistic approach if they came to the table, in hopes that it provides sort of background for folks in the elected official realm to be able to have those conversations with them that Naama was mentioning.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm surprised that they don't have some compulsory mitigation to do that this could fit the bill for, which is kind of surprising, I guess I'll say. But it sounds like you guys are dealing with a lot of complexity there. So thanks for sharing. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for that super interesting, really great presentation. I have a couple questions about maintenance. And it's okay if no one knows the answer, but I'm curious about who is going, if there's any thoughts on the table about who's going to maintain the trail and the little mini park through the basin south of the Wildcat Creek fish ladder, and also curious about who's going to own, I guess, and maintain the living shoreline levee.
Yeah. I'll give a short answer, and please, team.
Yeah.
Juliana, the issues that I think so for the fish pass, Juliana, what I'm trying to say, I'm sorry, is that there's noise. So maybe if you it worked better when you close your camera, unfortunately. For the fish passage, there's an easement. East Bay Regional Parks has an easement for the trail, and we're in conversation with them. But again, you know, it's complicated, but we're speaking with them about that. And for the Shoreline project, which is a much larger scale project, that is exactly what Juliana was talking about, of trying to design a governance structure. Juliana, do you want to add on that? Anything? Hope the voice is okay.
Yeah, sorry about my audio. So what we're thinking is that we're going to have to create a new model. So it's either going to be an agreement between the main stakeholders on buying or creating easements for the private spaces, or creating some sort of like land trust kind of holder of that land, and then having the funding for it come either through like the agreements and a combination of either the Green Benefit District or the Climate Resiliency District. So it will be like the funding mechanism for it could be a combination of state and local funding, at least for the first like couple years, but eventually it will have to go to the local entities to try to raise the funds for the long-term maintenance and operations. And that's why creating some sort of special district may be a solution. So we're gonna hopefully be studying this during the next couple of years to come up with a viable solution for the stakeholders.
And quickly, just to clarify, the living levee is going to be on the wastewater treatment plant property, right? Okay, so are they going to be responsible for the long-term maintenance, or at least part of it? Yeah, okay.
In some way, yeah. And
Great.
yeah, so that first phase, that yellow phase is predominantly on West County wastewater property, but has tie-ins with flood control district property.
Got it. Okay, great. I saw that a question came in through the chat from Alan and Wendy, and it was actually one of my questions as well. I think it's for Jeanine. The question about why, or if there could be more native species being considered for the urban tree greening project, particularly if this is going to be a model for the rest of the county. I know I was a little bit disappointed to see so many non-native trees, but can you speak to that a little bit?
I'm happy to. So we have a short list of the approved trees that people can plant in the right of way. And at the moment, we're still working on getting that approved and negotiating. I would love to see more native trees. And so we're looking at the habitat value of trees, even if they're not native. And we're also very careful not to plant anything that could spread into the habitat areas and impact that negatively, of course. So we can provide trees for pollinators and fruit trees for people to improve equity for food access. So we have the short list of trees that are approved that can go in their public right of way. This will probably be, there are probably less than 20 tree opportunity sites in that planting strip. So it's going to be a narrow number of trees. And then we have a long list of natives that we're advocating for. And also we're working on a Hope Gardens project, which is mostly native pollinator plants in the planting strips. So the plants that we want to encourage that are especially large carbon sequestering native trees like oaks and redwoods that could go particularly improve habitat along the creek. So we have to plant trees in those areas. The parks are in Richmond, so to plant trees in the creek corridor, of course, that has to do with flood control and maintenance activities. So we have some proposed ideas to go there, but it's kind of like some discussions that need to be had to move that forward. But then there are also people's front yards, and there's plenty of opportunities. So our job is to educate and work with homeowners to encourage them to make good choices. And habitat is certainly a priority.
Great, thank you. Yeah, don't get me wrong, more trees is good. More trees is a good thing. But yeah, definitely pushing for those native species, especially considering that this is kind of an adaptation project, and
absolutely
with all of the climate change that's happening, it's going to be harder and harder for non-native trees to make it. Igor.
Well, thank you. I had 3 questions I was going to ask about, and 2 of them have already been dealt with. The Chevron one, I just wanted to add my voice to those who think this is a really big gorilla in the room, and they've got lots of money. And they ought to be a source of funding for a lot of this activity. It could be the benevolent corporate giant next door to the Marsh doing some really good things if they chose to. So I wouldn't ask you not to be discouraged by so far, but keep after that, because the prize is certainly large. The other one had to do with the native trees as well, and you've all dealt with that. So I just want to add that I agree with all you've said about how beneficial trees are, and especially native trees, which are adapted to this area. And we have, I think with us, we have a member of the owner of the watershed nursery here. I'm sure she'd be glad to provide us with all the trees we needed. The other question had to do with the fish passage and the creeks themselves. I wonder if any emphasis has been made on trying to find ways to reduce the sediment load coming down out of the upper reaches of that watershed. In parts of it, East Bay Regional Parks is doing some work. In parts of it, I understand, has not been addressed. And if you want your fish ladder to work indefinitely, going to have to address the sediment load somehow or other. So, and also would affect what you do downstream as well, because a lot of that big pile of gravel that's down there, that's sediment that's come down the creek. And just going to get more of it unless we grapple with that question as well.
Ari, you need to unmute yourself because that question is for you.
Oh, sorry. Could you restate that a little bit, Igor?
Sure. Was I unclear?
I was a little bit distracted, but was also a little unclear on the sediment portion of it.
Yeah.
I think the idea was just, is there going to be anything being done to try to reduce the sediment load coming into the fish passage area?
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, there are projects upstream that are looking at that. I don't know if East Bay Regional Park District wants to speak to that. I think outside of the scope of this in some ways, but I do think that we're in the midst of kind of a renaissance on Wildcat Creek, and I think that looking at it from the watershed perspective is something that is happening in other parts of the watershed. I will say that one part that we're certainly investigating is to keep sediment out of the fish passage structure itself, looking at some ways to have like either bollards or some kind of devices that are in place to make sure that stays more clear and requires less maintenance than it currently does.
The current settling basin is downstream of the fish ladder.
Yeah.
So if there's something could be done on an analogous way upstream to capture whatever's, and even better would be if some stabilization work could be done further up the watershed. That would all be beneficial to everything you're trying to do down here.
Yeah, that's true.
Igor, I just want to add some clarification about those sediment piles. So there's sediment piles that are from I don't know what they did, the creek cleaning, like I think in the 80s or the 90s, and they're very flat. They're farther from the creek. The ones that we showed in the picture, they're not from the sediment basin. They're just gravel that is stored there.
Okay, well, I was used to be involved in the fish ladder issue quite a bit more deeply, and just downstream of the fish ladder, there's a tremendous amount of deposited sediment. And I guess I was confusing it with this other one, but that's just evidence that there's a lot of it there, and there's more of it to come with global warming.
Yeah, thanks, Igor. Sarah, did you have something?
Yeah, I was also curious about the sediment. I saw one of the pictures. You could see the fish ladder, and then one of the pictures, it was completely buried under sediment. So, and the sediment basin, is downstream. So I'm wondering, and Flow West did that cool modeling of the water, and I'm wondering if your modeling included sediment flow or just the water, and how that's not, the sediment isn't going to fill up the new fish ladder structure.
Yeah, so we're certainly looking at sediment and analyzing that. We're not modeling sediment flow in the same way that we are modeling flow, but we are looking at the depths of water through the fish passage structure and through the sediment basin under different management scenarios, I guess I'd say. The sediment amount that fills up in the sediment basin is kind of interesting in terms of there's a weir that is down at the downstream end of the sediment basin that presumably is setting the level at which sediment backs up, but the actual level at which sediment is at currently is several feet above that weir. And so yeah, there's a lot of sediment in the system, and there's larger questions to be answered about how best to manage that through the sediment basin that hopefully we'll be looking at as part of this project.
Okay, and then sorry, related to that, I'm just curious, who currently maintains the fish ladder and the sediment?
This is owned by Contra Costa County Flood Control District and managed by them. In terms of, I think, clearing out the sediment basin, that's done by the Flood Control District, and the fish passage structure in terms of maintaining it, that's done in conjunction with both the Flood Control District, and I know Trout Unlimited has been going out there, and volunteer groups have been working on clearing out the fish passage structure to ensure fish passage.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, so it sounds like potentially that might need to continue if that continues to be a problem even after the new structures are in place.
Some kind of maintenance will definitely always be required in the system with both the amount of sediment, both in urban debris, but we're hoping that our design will minimize the amount of maintenance that's required and really try and focus sediment going to the sediment basin as it's designed to work.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? This has been an awesome discussion. Thank you all. I saw that a couple other people joined us. Itzel and Vencel also joined us. I love that your names rhyme. Did either of you want to introduce yourselves or give any updates or anything like that? I just wanted to give you a chance before we wrap up, if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Itzel. I work at Earth Team, which is a nonprofit based in Richmond. So I work with a lot of high school students in Richmond and in Contra Costa County. Updates from us. We have been working, our Pinole project has been working on a pollinator habitat garden in the upper Pinole Creek watershed. So our coordinator, Kaylee, who's working with students at Pinole Valley High School, has been working really closely with them in getting that project started. And then my Richmond interns have been doing a lot of litter assessments here in San Pablo. So that's kind of super quick update from us at Earth Team.
Thank you, Itzel. Vincel, did you want to say anything? Just wanted to give you a chance.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. It's always a tricky
sure.
thing. My name is Vincel, and I'm with Yes Nature and Neighborhoods. We're over across the street from Nickel Park in Richmond. And we had, I want to thank Susan for giving me the heads up on this gathering. But I have a cohort of youth working under a coastal conservation grant, and we are working on taking civic action in defense and advocacy of our watersheds. And right now we're focused on San Pablo Creek over at the El Portal overpass and the new construction that was done there, and seeing how can we show some love to the creek there in regards to, you know, cleanup and who is responsible for stuff. So my next step, Jocelyn, our intern, is we're about to go to City Hall on Monday to get some more further. We're just digging and trying to get these youth involved in civic action. So thank you, and thank you for all the information. I was on an interview panel earlier, and I had to I'm gonna jump in when I can, but from what I saw, I was blown away. I wish I could have been here earlier.
Yeah, thank you so much for that update, and thank you for the work you're doing, because that is going to be so important to the longevity of these projects. So thank you again so much to our presenters. The presentation will be in full be available on our CCWatershedForum.org site. So if you do want to see this again or share it with someone, you will have the opportunity. So thank you again, everyone, and have a wonderful day.